Hail Saturday if you had in the car garage business, and I couldn't get off any more time. But almost 2 years to the date, we fast forward now to August 1957, the World Series of Drag Racing in Cordova, Illinois, a meet that has been going on longer than the NHRA event. They started in Lawrenceville, Illinois with the first nationals, the ATAA. And Kissimmee was ATAA sanctioned because they wanted to run fuel. And by now, in '57, NHRA had banned fuel. You had to only run gasoline. So this car, as you see it right here, won the most events at Kissimmee, and they gave us an expense-paid trip to the World Series, which was $450. Which you would think that wouldn't do anything, but that was plenty of money to go up there, gasoline, food, motel, and return. In fact, in 1959, we went to California for 3 solid weeks. My brother, myself, and my wife, motels, gasoline, all expenses, including whatever we had to do to the dragster, $500. But gasoline was very inexpensive. It was like 22 cents a gallon, and a hamburger was 10 cents, and a motel room was $6. You know, it was just a different world. The money meant so much more than it did today. But anyway, we went to Cordova with the car. It looks like this. This car was running on about 25% nitro, which is about what I ran in the flathead. And it ran like 145 miles an hour and a quarter in the high 10s. And we got to Cordova, and who should be there but the Cook and Bedwell car. Had the picture of that car nailed up in my garage. That was my hero. That's the first car over 160 miles an hour. And that time was 166.66, and it would run in the 8s. Wow. And but that 8-second time that he recorded was from quite a ways back from the starting line. Anyway, there was the car. And my wife and I watched it go down the track one time, and my wife looked at me and she said, "Honey, we can't beat that car." She could tell just by looking at my car running, that thing was fast. So I just went right over to the Cook and Bedwell camp after they made a run, and I said, "Hello, Mr. Cook, I'm Don Garlits. I have a car just like yours, a fuel dragster with a Chrysler Hemi engine in it. And I can only get 25% nitro through my Stromberg carburetors. How do you get 98% nitro in your car and not burn it up?" He says, "Well," he says, "it's a tricky deal, but this is how you do it." He said, "You got to take the Stromberg carburetor, you got to drill the dump tubes out 1/4 of an inch, and you drive a 1/4 inch tubing in place of the old original dump tubes, and the inside of that tube is 187,000. And then you take the jets and you throw them away. And then on the idle circuit, you drill that out 65,000, and you screw the idle needle in now till it stops, and you back it out 3 full turns, and that takes care of the idle. Then on the inlet valve coming into the carburetor, you drill that out to 128,000 and reseat the needle to make sure that it will work. And you do that by putting it on your tongue and putting a vacuum. If it'll hang there, you know you got it." And then he says you have to take and put 10 pounds against the floats. What you do, he says, you pump up the tank to 10 pounds on the starting line just before you leave. And when you look out there and you see the carburetor's flooding, you know it's time to go. You let the clutch out, and that's it. Oh, and by the way, you need to put 2 ounces of Benny in each gallon of nitro. And my wife says, "What did he say? And who's Benny?" and Cook said, "Benny is benzene, honey. Have a gallon." He reached in the back of his truck and he gave her a gallon of benzene. And she just kind of looking bedazzled. And I said, "We got to get out of here. We got a lot of work to do." So we drove down to Cordova to the town, and there was a little gas station here, and there was a guy, old man, sitting in a chair out in front of the gas station waiting for somebody to come in. This is when they pumped your gas and checked your oil, you know. And I said to the guy, I parked over to the side. I said, "I have to use a vise and a drill motor and some electricity. I have to modify my carburetors." And he said, did I hear you right? You're going to take a drill motor and drill into a carburetor. I said, yes, sir. He said, I would like to watch that. He said, if you allow me to watch, there'll be no charge. At 2 o'clock in the morning, I drove out of there with the 6 carburetors modified, just like Mr. Cook had said. And there are the 6 carburetors right there. Now the extra one you can see in this picture, there's the brand new one. But the carburetors that got modified are right there. Well, we get to the drag strip the next morning. After the next day is eliminations. So we actually were in a tent at the drag strip. So we get up the next morning, get the car ready to go up to the staging lanes, and they have chosen to have me run the Cook and Bedwell car in the first round. And my wife says, why are they making us run the fastest car? We're not fast at all. We'd only run like 145 miles an hour, and they were running 165. And I said, well, honey, they're trying to make sure that the star of the show doesn't get beat in the first round. And they give him an easy car, and that way he'll advance on. Well, it didn't turn out that way. That guy dropped the flag, and I was gone. I have a picture of it. It's not on a wall. I should have it on the wall, but I do have a picture. It said, the picture was in a little magazine. It says, Garlits out front and Cook behind. I ran a 9.96 to Cook's 10.04. And even with a bad start, that would beat him. I mean, the crowd went completely crazy. I come back up the return road. This is me coming up the return road right here after the run. And we got to the head of staging, and Jim Lamona, the president of the club of ATA, he said, in all fairness to the world champion, we'll have to see that run again. So they made me run him again, and I beat him again, which is really good, because now it was absolutely definite that there was somebody that was really fast out there, faster than the world's fastest from California, and there was no doubt about it. It was not a fluke. He beat him 2 straight, and so it broke the team up. They went on to the AHRA meet in Great Bend, Kansas, and they run that meet, and then the team broke up, and they sold the car to Myron Davis, and they destroyed it. And so Cook and I became great friends later in life, and him and I built the Cook and Bedwell car in the booth over across from Shirley is the blue car that Emery Cook and I built as a replica of that car right there, so that we would have this car for history. And he took that car to Carlsbad and duplicated his run. He went 168.22, which was one of his record runs. So we're really proud of that. And it's just so much surrounding this car. This car ran for 6 years. And the following, so anyway, I come back from Cordova, and I made all these changes to the car, and I put 8 carburetors on instead of 6. I modified the front end. I modified all the drivetrain, and I went up to Brooksville, Florida, and we put 80% nitro in it, made a warm-up run to test all the running gear and everything. They run 165 miles an hour. Then we came back and put the 98% in, and it went 176.4, but they didn't know that. The charts stopped at 165. So they said, we don't know what he turned, but we're going to find out Monday when we call the clock company. So they called the clock company Monday morning, and at noon, my time, 9 o'clock in California, at my little dirt floor shop up on Nebraska Avenue, the phone rang, and it was Mr. Ed Eskandarian. And he said, hello, pal. You just went 176 miles an hour. That's the first I knew. He said, you are the new world record holder. And I got about 50 match races for 58 because of that. Everybody wanted to see 170 miles an hour and a quarter. And many tracks, we did set that kind of a speed if it was a decent track. But we always raised the track record. And in June of 1958, they really got sick and tired of hearing about me. So they sent their 3 fastest cars, Romeo Palamides' car, Jack Ewell, and the little rear engine car, Red Chase. They sent them to Houston. They didn't. They wouldn't come to Florida. They said, you need to meet us halfway. It was called a California Challenge. And they all met there in Houston at the Freeway Drag Strip, which is another, was a drag strip that's been closed a long time now. And so I run them one at a time. I ran the Chase car first, and then I ran the Yule car, and finally the Palomides car. And I outrun all three of them. And it was really a great day. And of course, I'm learning all the time about how to go faster. So by the end of the year, on December the 8th, 1958, in Brooksville, I raised the world record to 180 miles an hour in 8.52 seconds. And Drag News came out with it. They put me on the cover and said that's it. He won 180, but it says that's not a 1320 record because we have outlawed concrete strips to set records on. And of course, now today they have lots of concrete strips. And anyway, they always said that really you can't go 180 miles an hour on carburetors. But I restored this car in 1979, and I restored it back to the way it was when it won 180. Because this car later had a blower on it, and I'll tell you about that in a minute. And so I toured this car all over the United States, making just little burnouts and short burnouts because NHRA don't like the roll cage, you know, and they have our license, so they have power over us, you know. They can tell you what to do, whether you like it or not. They take your license. But I went up to Bristol in 1991. I just had to know how fast this thing would go, and I had it all primed. It was all set, just like it was in 1958 when it went 180, and all the same gears, carburetors, everything. Just the block and the heads are not original because I tore all those up. But all of that stuff is all original. So I told the drag strip operator I was just going to make a burnout. But they didn't spray the track right to the edge. There was a nice strip about this wide that was not sprayed all the way down. And that's what this car wanted. You don't want sprayed tracks. It wants the dry pavement. So I pulled off right to the edge of the track, and it smoked them right through the lights. It went 182 miles an hour and some change. And if you go to my website, garlits.com, click on the Swamp Red Gallery, then scroll down to the 180 car, you'll see a picture of the time card from Bristol, Tennessee in 1991. I really love that. That was a big deal. But then in California, they had me come to California. They said, we just got to get him out here on our strips. And so in March of 1959, I went to Bakersfield, California for one of the biggest races of all time. They paid me $4,500 to come and do 3 events. Well, at Bakersfield, California, it was a cold morning, and I wasn't used to that, and it's a lot of nitro, and I should have warmed this thing on gasoline. I started on nitromethane, and it broke a rod. And so in the first round, so I didn't get to run. But then we went back to Ed Escadir's, and everybody had superchargers then. So we put a supercharger on it. We went up to Kingdom to the second event, which we won handily, had top time and low ET. And then the next race was Chandler, Arizona, and I won that, and I lowered the ET record to 8.45. Then I came back here, and I went to Brooksville, and it went 185.56, but like they said, they wouldn't allow that because it was on concrete. But the following week, I went to Houston, Texas, and went 182.54, and that was the new 1320 record because that was an asphalt strip. And the speed, the ET was 8.48 there, but that didn't break my 8.45 from Chandler. So then the next event was Chester, South Carolina on June the 20th, 1959. I made a nice little warm up, 176 miles an hour, and then I put the nitro in it, and I come back, and right in the lights, the supercharger exploded. The whole thing caught on fire. I did not have gloves or a face mask. We used to race in t-shirts, but before that race, before I left the house, my wife handed me a brand new leather jacket, and she said, "Honey, would you please wear this leather jacket when you race? If you turn over, you save your shoulders from getting all scarred up. Little did you know that jacket saved my life because I was burned so bad. My hands were burned beyond third degree. When I got out of the car, 2 big skin gloves just fell off my hands to the drag strip into my just red, bloody red hands. It was a scary moment. And I had heard about burns like that, and I was a young guy, and I didn't think I'd make it. So anyway, they took me to the Chester Hospital. My wife wasn't there. I called her on the phone, or had the nurse call her and told her she needs to get up to Chester, that I had a little fire in the pits, but I'd probably be in the hospital a few days. And really, I was thinking I was going to be dying there probably. Anyway, she came up in 6 weeks in the hospital. I was still alive. That the doctor come in one morning and he said, Mr. Garlits, he says, you see those red lines coming up and down your wrist? I said, yes, sir. He says, that's blood poison. He says, I got to take your hands off.
Oh my.
I said, you're not taking my hands off. I'd rather be dead. And he says, you're just delirious because you're not thinking straight. You for sure don't want to be dead. So my wife walked in the room and he said something to her, and she come over to the bed, and I said, honey, please, for God's sake, don't sign a paper to take my hands off. I'd rather be dead. And so she told the doctor, I'm not signing the operation paper. He'd rather die than have his hands taken off. And the doctor, thank God, said, well, you need to get him out of this hospital because I don't want him dying under my care. So she called Tampa Municipal, which is now Tampa General. It's a big, fine hospital. We rode a train down here. The hospital administrator told her that you bring your husband here and we'll keep him comfortable while he dies. Anyway, I got to the Tampa Municipal, and I walked into the ER, and this surgeon come down from upstairs. He was a burn specialist, and he took the bandages off each hand, and he took the little finger and he straightened it out. It was all, my hands were all curled up real bad, and he took the little finger and he straightened it out, and the blood popped out of it, and he did the other one and the blood popped out, and he said, get this man up to surgery. He's got good circulation. Within 30 minutes of walking into that hospital, I was in the operating room. They just don't do stuff like that today. It's weak pre-op and all this crap. Anyway, I woke up the next morning, my hands was in saline solution. They were just red, bloody red, but he had it soaking in saline solution. I was there 6 weeks, and he released me. And I mean, here I am, you look at it. But here's another thing that was really interesting. The drag strip did not have the insurance. They had not paid for the insurance. So the hospital bill for 6 weeks in intensive care in Chester, 6 weeks intensive care in Tampa Municipal, the bill came to me. And there's not one person in this room could even come close to what that bill was, because you're all used to the modern bills of medicine. $1,600 for 12 weeks. That was medicine, everything. See, we're being ripped off by the medical association. There's no doubt about it. It's not necessary. And they did everything. I mean, it was wonderful care. It wasn't some second-rate hospital. I mean, you check out Tampa General. It's one of the top hospitals in the nation. Anyway. As Frank Sinatra says in his song, I've lived a life that's full, and I've traveled each and every highway. And God bless all of you for coming out.